This is Mrs. H. So today we are talking about our test beds, and we're actually going to be going through and doing our first setup for our programming of our test beds. So your test bed should probably look something like this guy over here. Keep in mind that exact placement of the different sensors is not like the end of the world if you put it 2 spaces off or whatever. We are going to talk about where you plug them in. That does matter, where they go into the brain, but the rest of it is, kind of close and we're good. So first things first, make sure that your Chromebook is set up with the VexCode V5 software. So if you're running a PC or a Mac, then you have to install the software and install the Chrome extension. If you're just running the Chromebook, which in my class most of you are, so then you would just go ahead and go to this, go to this link here, and there it goes. It's bringing it up, and you're going to select which one you want, and you're going to download it to your Chromebook, and it will install essentially on your school Chromebook. And so you scroll down till you find the red one right here. And so you can download it for Windows, download it for Mac. In our case, we are going to be using it on our Chrome web store because that's where you're going to be downloading it for our district. So go ahead, and it's the red here. It says VexCode V5, and you're going to go ahead and download it for your computer or your Chromebook, either way. So that's what that looks like. It says, install the software. Really? There we go. So we're going to install the software first. Once the software is installed, then we're going to actually open it up and look at what VexCode does. So let me bring that up, and then we'll move on. So the first things we're going to be looking at for VexCode is first you're going to open your VexCode, and then we need to name the project. So my VexCode looks like this when I open it, and I can double click up here to make it sort of take up the whole screen. Notice it's just called VexCode Project. So you can also come over here to the File section and open an existing project, or you can save as and give this a name. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come up here and see if it will let me change the name of the project before I save it. So there it comes up and says, hey, in order for you to save this project, you have to name it Testbed 1 and my initials. You could put your whole name in there if you wanted to. It's up to you. But basically, I have a spot on my Google Drive where I'm saving this, or you can save it to your downloads and then drag it over if you're on the Chromebook. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. You just need to have some sort of a name for it and some place to store it. Once this name changes up here, then you know it's saved correctly and you're ready to move on. So now that we've got that part, you can either do it by going to the File Save As, or you can come here and just change the name of the VexCode project. So we have to set up our hardware. And in this case, we have a lot of hardware to set up because we've put all of these sensors on there and we've got multiple motors going on, and we need everything to be in the correct place. So the way to do that is up at the top of your window, you see this little thing that kind of represents a motor. You're going to click on that and click on Add Device. And then we're going to go in and we're going to start talking about how to add devices. So this is what will show up. And there are a couple of things that happen when you're setting up your device. So you have to know where everything is plugged in on your brain and in which port, because what happens is the brain just sends electricity to the port you tell it to. So make sure they're all plugged in correctly, and please name your stuff correctly. Do not name your motor Bob or Henry or James or Susie or whatever. The reason I say that is because students always do that. They want to name their motors weird things. And then later I'm like, okay, so which motor is Bob? They have no idea because they didn't label it correctly. So if it's on the left, you label it left motor. If it's on the right, you label it right motor. If it's a button that's going to turn something on, you can call it start bump or stop bump or like chair motor if it's running a chair. Give it a description describing not only what it does, like it runs the chair or it stops something, but what it is. If it's a bump switch, you call it a bump switch. If it's a motor, you call it a motor. That will help you a lot with your coding later, is naming things correctly. So we are going to have 5 bumpers. At one point during the year, we'll probably have something like 5 bumper switches. And if they're just named bumper A, B, C, D, E, you're in trouble because now you have no idea which one does what. So make sure you actually give them names based on how you intend to use them. If you name stuff after you start coding and you go in, oh, I forgot to name it, and then go name it, then you have to also change all your code. So I would set it all up to begin with just to make sure. And here's how you're going to set it up. So you probably have something that looks similar to this. It does not have to be perfectly correct. The right motor should be plugged into motor port 3. So you come over here and you find motor port 3 and you plug in the motor. The left motor will be in motor port 2. Find that, plug that into motor port 2. It's one on either of these sides. Then you've got a claw motor up here. If you're using the VEX V5 motor, then it's going to be in motor port 1, again on the side. I'm actually using one of the older 3-wire motors, and so I'm putting it in 3-wire A, which is over here on this edge. I'm going to plug mine in there. Bumper switch should be, it's in the 3-wire port C. You have a limit switch. It should go into 3-wire port B. Line tracker into 3-wire D. And then you have an eye or a light sensor should go into the 3-wire port E. And if you have them all in the correct ports, then your life gets a lot easier. So I'm going to switch this over so you can actually see mine. I'm going to show you where everything is. Okay, folks, so as you can see, I've got all my stuff plugged in. So this motor, I have the motor cord here. It looks like a little phone cord end, and it goes into the motor. And then the other side of it, so I'm gonna get this back in here now. I took it out, there it goes right here. So this is motor ports 1, 2, and 3. Now notice I'm only using motor ports 2 and 3 on mine because my motor up here for my claw is actually a VEX 393 motor, which I'm using a little motor adapter, and I have it plugged in right here in the correct motor port spot. So my motor is here in motor port or 3-wire port A. And then in 3-wire port B, I have my limit switch here. I have my C, which is here, my bumper switch. So I've got my bumper switch, my limit switch. This is my line tracker, and it is currently in, looks like D. Line switch, line tracker's in D, and then I have a light sensor, which is in E. So all my stuff is hooked up, my battery's plugged in, and I am all ready to go. So what I'm going to be doing is sending code to the brain, which will then control all these. So I have my brain plugged into my computer, and I have the battery on. Turn the power on there so I make sure it works. I hold this down. There it goes. It's all lit up, and it says ensure your battery is plugged in, and I can hit either confirm or cancel. That's fine. And then what happens is my information is going to go from my computer over here through the cord up here and then from here. Okay, folks, so now that I've checked my wiring diagram, I'm going to go through and we're going to code some things. So the first thing I have to do is, now that I have everything set up, I'm going to go ahead and I've already set it up in my VEX code, and I'm going to look at these drawers over here. So on the side, you're going to have this in VEX code, and those are called drawers. Those headers are on the side, and they contain all the blocks that you're going to need. If you add a line tracker, then the information for the line tracker will magically show up over here for you to be able to use it under sensing. If you haven't set up something, then it doesn't show up over there. So if you're looking at it and you don't have any motion blocks, it's because you haven't set up your motors. So you need to go back and do that. The first part we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a basic set of code that's going to run the left motor forward for 5 seconds, stop the left motor. Okay, and notice I've named it left motor. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to come on over to VEX Code and we are going to load that. Okay, so here's my VEX Code and notice I have all my motors, my left and right motor, my claw motor. There we go. So limit switch, bumper switch, line tracker, and light sensor all set up. You should make sure this is all set up first. Then we can start coding. And so I can now close that. And the first thing we need is an event. And the easiest event to use is when started. So when started is the first option. And notice it looks much like you would think it would in Scratch or any of the other block-based coding languages, is it just says when started. So when started, we want to turn on the left motor. So I'm going to go to motion and I'm going to spin left motor forward. And now I have to tell it how long to spin that forward for. So I'm going to go down here and pull out a weight. And I said in my directions, I want that to be 5 seconds. And for some reason, my thing is really slow this morning. There we go. Wait, it says 1 second. So I'm just going to change it to 5. And then I'm going to come over here and stop that motor. So there's stop left motor. And put that in there. So now I'm just going to go back to my directions for a second. And they say left motor, 5 seconds, stop left motor. All right, looks good. So now I'm going to test it. The way I test is first make sure your brain is connected. If this is not green, it's orange. That means it needs to do an update on your brain. It's no big deal. Just hit update. Just make sure you don't unplug the brain while it's updating. Yes, I've accidentally done that before. And yes, it causes a major problem. So don't do it. So now I'm just going to hit, I see that it's green, it's all set up, it's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and download it. So there you go, it compiled correctly, it's sent over there. Now if I want to run it from here, I would just hit that. And it will run one of my motors forward for 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like here from my actual camera. Okay, so here's my actual thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and run it from my VEX Code on my computer right here. And you can see that this wheel is turning and it's going to turn for 5 seconds and then it's going to stop itself. That's the code that I told it to run. So as you can see, it works exactly the way I intended. Now I can go move on to my next section. Okay, so now we have tested activity 1. You'll notice that there's a video here for you in the presentation so that you can actually see, and you'll notice each activity has its own little video to show you what it's supposed to look like. And it says the left motor runs for 5 seconds and then stops. Here's a copy of what the code should look like. Once you get it working, you're going to save this as Testbed 1, your name. And you're going to give your sheet to your teacher, me, who's going to sign off and say, yes, I saw activity 1 run. That's great. And then you can move on to the next activity in the set, which, hold on, it's trying to play my video. There we go, which would be this using some of the control blocks and using an until. So that's activity 2. We just went through, did all the setup and did activity 1. So you should be all set and ready to go.